So there's a wild story that's not getting nearly enough attention. I mean, online it made quite a splash, but CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, NBC, CBS, ABC, the nightly news. Barely a peep, barely a mention, which is pathetic. And by the way, it kind of feeds into Noam Chomsky's thesis in Manufacturing Consent in terms of the corporate structure of media sometimes serves state power even more than state media serves state power. So you'll see what I mean here in a second. What story am I talking about? United States rejects UN resolution condemning use of death penalty to target LGBTQ people. Wow. So the resolution was against the death penalty, and it was also specifically against the death penalty for apostasy, blasphemy, adultery, and consensual same-sex relations. The U.S. voted against it and also demanded that executions be allowed with experimental drugs, and the vote was 27-13. I'm sure, as you can imagine, all the modern countries were for this resolution, and the U.S., was lumped in with fucking theocracies and backwards-ass dictatorships. So this is probably one of the biggest stories of the week. It should be. People should be like, what the fuck just happened here? But again, it's really not getting that much coverage, certainly not in the mainstream media, because what's the only logical takeaway from this story? Oh, the U.S. is massively full of shit when they talk about where the world police, where the people who uphold civil liberties, human rights around the world, where the people who care about altruism and justice and freedom and democracy, which is why we're best friends with Saudi Arabia, an absolute monarchy and a theocracy, why we're friends with the perpetual occupiers in Israel. So this just busts up that whole, those alliances alone bust up that whole mythology. You can't say you care deeply about human rights and then, give smooth hand jobs to the Saudi king and hold hands with him as you walk through the garden. You don't get to do that. You don't get to say, oh man, we love freedom. And by the way, Saudi Arabia, one of the most oppressive countries on earth, we're not even going to criticize them. We're going to make love to them. So you don't get to say that up front. But, look at how brazen this is, because this is an example of you don't even have to, directly snub your oil butt buddy ally, Saudi Arabia. This is just a non-binding, hey man, here's what we think about this issue. And the U.S. couldn't bring itself to say, yes, the death penalty, and specifically the death penalty against apostasy, blasphemy, adultery, and consensual same-sex relations, it's wrong. Human rights, liberal values. The U.S. spreads liberal democratic values, except when it doesn't, and it spreads far-right dictatorial theocratic values. How easy should it be to say, you know what? If somebody says, I want to leave Islam, or I want to leave religion, they shouldn't be killed. Is that hard to do? Is it hard to say, hey, if you make fun of somebody's God, you shouldn't be killed? I know, in elite circles, it's impolite to slam somebody's religion. But should you be killed if you do it? Should you be killed if you have consensual same-sex relations? Should you be killed if somebody cheats on their spouse? Killed. I feel like the younger generations see stories like this and they go, oh, so we see how full of shit our government is and how it's all about natural resources and the status quo and remaining the sole imperial power. And younger people see this and they go, that is complete and utter horse shit, and now we're going to fight to try to make our country better. But unfortunately, the reality is a lot of people in older generations either don't see this stuff, or when they do see it, they just kind of shrug it off. Necessary alliances. Necessary alliances. Sure, we go back on everything we claim to believe in, but that's only because it's a necessary alliance. You know, what are we going to do? We have to say that killing people for consensual same-sex relations is okay, right? Hoo-hoo-hoo. Well, then just don't pretend you're the world police and you care about human rights and civil liberties, because you decidedly do not. It's the exact opposite. You don't give a fuck about them when they conflict with your business relationships. Business overrides everything, power overrides everything, and you'll look the other way to the most heinous crimes. So spare me your fucking moralizing about how, oh my goodness, we have to get involved in this country or that country because it's a humanitarian crisis. Hoo hoo hoo. You don't give a fuck about that, because if you did, you would have clearly voted for this resolution, but not only that, you would have been working behind the scenes diplomatically to try to stop all the human rights abusers who are your allies, and stop your own human rights abuses. Guantanamo Bay is still open. You know, we torture people. We do wars of aggression. We're bombing 7 nations right now. Don't tell me you care about human rights and justice. It's so disingenuous and it's pathetic.